Nothing says marital doom like truth or dare with Meera and tequila. I should have known the night was headed south when my wife Claire suggested we spice things up at her friend's 35th birthday bash. But there I was, sitting cross-legged on Meera's overpriced Persian rug, watching a circle of adults who should have known better pass around a bottle of Patron like we were still in college. Gavin! Meera's voice cut through the haze of expensive candles and bad decisions. Truth or dare? I'm Gavin Rourke, 37, and I make custom furniture for people with more money than sense. I've got calloused hands, a mortgage in suburban LA, and apparently a wife who thinks humiliating me in public counts as foreplay. Truth, I said, because I'm not stupid enough to let Meera dare me to do anything. Boring, Claire laughed, and the sound hit me wrong. Too bright, too sharp. He always picks truth. Fine, Meera grinned like a shark. What's the most annoying thing about being married to Claire? The room went quiet, except for someone's Spotify playlist bleeding in from the kitchen. I looked at Claire, expecting her to roll her eyes or tell Meera to ask something else. Instead, she leaned forward, genuinely curious, like she was watching a car accident. She leaves coffee rings on my workbench, I said. Safe, domestic, boring, lame. This from Elias Greer, Claire's spin instructor, who'd somehow earned a spot in our circle, despite being about as welcome as a root canal. The guy was all teeth and hair product, the kind of fitness guru who probably counted his abs in the mirror every morning. Claire, truth or dare? Dare. No hesitation. Of course, I dare you to tell us who you'd trade Gavin for, if you could. The bottle stopped moving. Someone's laugh died mid-chuckle. I felt my face go hot, then cold, like I'd stepped into a walk-in freezer. Claire didn't even pause. Elias, obviously. She said it like she was ordering coffee. Casual. Matter of fact. Like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away, watching my marriage implode in real time. The circle erupted in nervous laughter, and oh my gods. And Claire, you're terrible. But Elias just smiled, the smug bastard. And Claire giggled like she'd made the cleverest joke in the world. I stood up. I need some air. Gavin, don't be such a baby, Claire called after me. It's just a game. Just a game, right. I stepped onto Meera's balcony and stared out at the LA sprawl, all glittering lights and broken dreams. The city looked pretty from up here, which was probably the point. Distance makes everything prettier. Behind me, the game continued. More laughter, more dares, more truths that weren't quite true. I could hear Claire's voice rising above the rest, animated in a way she hadn't been with me in months, maybe years. When we finally left, the car ride home was a masterpiece of passive aggression. Claire stared out the passenger window while I navigated the late-night traffic, both of us pretending the elephant in the back seat wasn't tap dancing on our marriage certificate. You're being ridiculous, she said as we pulled into our driveway. Am I? It was a joke, Gavin. God, you're so sensitive. Sensitive. There it was, the word she'd been saving up, polishing like a weapon. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, wondering when exactly I'd become the punchline in my own life. You know what's funny? I said. I used to think you respected me. I do respect you. No, Claire, you don't. And the really hilarious part is, I don't think you ever did. We'd hit the iceberg, but I was still rearranging deck chairs. Inside, we moved around each other like ghosts, brushing teeth and changing clothes, with the mechanical precision of people who'd forgotten how to be human together. I slept on the couch. Claire didn't argue. The next morning brought coffee and awkward silence. Claire made her usual smoothie, all kale and self-righteousness, while I nursed black coffee and a growing sense that something fundamental had shifted in the night. She was checking her phone more than usual, thumb scrolling with the kind of focused attention she used to reserve for me. I'm meeting the girls for brunch, she said, not looking up. Which girls? Just the girls, from last night. Her phone buzzed. A text. She read it and smiled. Actually smiled. The first genuine expression I'd seen from her since we got home. Who's that? Nobody. Just Meera being Meera. But I caught a glimpse of the screen as she turned away. The contact name wasn't Meera. It was a simple E, with a heart emoji. Miss you already, the text read. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. Claire. What? Who's E? She froze, smoothie halfway to her lips. What are you talking about? The text. From E, with the heart. Oh. She set down the glass, and I could see her calculating, weighing options like she was deciding which lie would hurt least. That's That's Emma, from yoga. Emma? Yes, Emma. God, Gavin, you're being paranoid. But Emma wasn't at the party last night. Emma was Claire's yoga friend from 2 years ago, before she switched to spin classes, before she started coming home sweaty and glowing in a way that had nothing to do with exercise, before Elias. Show me the phone. Excuse me? If it's just Emma being Emma, show me the phone. The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Claire's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, guilt, anger, defiance, before settling on something that looked like relief. You know what? No, I'm not showing you anything. This is insane, Gavin. You're acting crazy. Crazy? Yes, crazy. Jealous and paranoid and crazy. Maybe that's why I need friends who don't interrogate me every time my phone buzzes. She grabbed her purse and keys, moving with the jerky efficiency of someone who'd been caught, and was trying to brazen it out. Where are you going? Out. Away from this. Away from you being. She waved her hand at me like I was something distasteful she'd found on her shoe. This. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there in my kitchen, surrounded by the detritus of our morning routine, her smoothie glass still half full, my coffee growing cold, the newspaper neither of us had bothered to read, and felt something that might have been relief. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. I finished my coffee, took a shower, and tried to pretend that everything was normal. But normal had left the building somewhere between truth or dare and miss you already. I found myself moving through the house like a detective in my own life, noticing things I'd been too comfortable to see before. The way Claire's gym bag was always packed and ready by the door. The new lingerie in her drawer, black lace things I'd never seen her wear. The credit card statements I'd stopped checking because I trusted her to handle our finances. I pulled up our joint account online and started scrolling through recent charges, restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel bar downtown, Victoria's Secret, multiple times, and something called Elite Fitness Personal Training that cost more per session than I made in a day. Elite Fitness, Elias's gym. I sat back in my desk chair and laughed, actually laughed, because the alternative was putting my fist through the monitor. My wife was having an affair with her spin instructor, funding it with our joint account, and apparently thought I was too stupid to notice. The really funny part, she was almost right. I'd been sleepwalking through our marriage for so long that I'd missed all the signs. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started looking at me like I was furniture, functional but not particularly interesting furniture, that she'd grown tired of rearranging. My phone rang. Claire. I'm staying at Meera's tonight, she said without preamble. I need space to think. About what? About us. About whether this is working. And what conclusion are you reaching? A pause. I don't know, Gavin. I don't know if I'm happy. Are you having an affair? The question hung in the air like smoke. I could hear her breathing, could almost see her standing in Meera's kitchen or living room, trying to decide which version of the truth would hurt least. I'm not doing this over the phone, she said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting right now. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked around my house, our house, seeing it clearly for the first time in years. The furniture I'd built with my own hands, the life we'd constructed together, piece by careful piece, all of it suddenly feeling as substantial as a house of cards in a hurricane. I made myself a sandwich and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, watching the neighbors through the window. Normal people living normal lives, probably not discovering their spouses were cheating on them with overpriced personal trainers. Then I walked to my workshop in the garage and did what I always did when the world stopped making sense. I worked with my hands. There's something about shaping wood that puts things in perspective. Wood doesn't lie. It doesn't cheat. It doesn't tell you it needs space to think while it's screwing someone else. I was sanding a cabinet door when I found it. Claire's laptop was sitting on my workbench, forgotten in her dramatic exit. She must have been using it out here yesterday, probably while I was running errands. I should have closed it and put it away, should have respected her privacy. Instead, I opened it. The browser was still logged into her email, and there, in her sent folder, was a thread between her and someone named spin_stud_e that made my sandwich threaten to come back up. Photos, dozens of them. Claire in lingerie I'd never seen. Claire in hotel rooms I'd never been to. Claire doing things with Elias that she hadn't done with me in years. And underneath the photos, messages that painted a picture of betrayal so complete, so carefully planned, that I had to admire the craftsmanship even as it destroyed me. Can't wait until G finally gets the hint. one message read. This pretending is killing me. Soon, baby, came Elias's reply. Just need to make sure we have enough evidence of his anger issues first. My lawyer says it'll make the divorce settlement much smoother. Evidence of my anger issues. I scrolled up, finding more messages, a timeline of manipulation that went back months. Claire documenting every argument, every raised voice, every moment of frustration, and spinning it into a narrative of abuse that existed only in her imagination. They were planning to destroy me. Not just leave me, destroy me. Take the house, take our savings, take whatever reputation I'd built in this town, and leave me with nothing but a legal bill and a restraining order. I closed the laptop and sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something calmer and more dangerous. They wanted to play games? Fine. I'd learned a few things about construction over the years, about building things up and tearing them down, about the importance of a solid foundation and what happens when you undermine someone else's. Claire thought she was married to a pushover, a man too comfortable and trusting to fight back. She was about to learn that comfort and passivity aren't the same thing. And Elias? Well, Elias was about to discover that some furniture makers know a lot about taking things apart. I spent the rest of the weekend becoming a detective in my own life. Turns out, I'm not a bad investigator when I'm motivated. Google Calendar is a hell of a snitch, and Claire had never bothered to make hers private. Every yoga class and girls' night mapped out in neat little digital squares, most of them coinciding perfectly with gaps in Elias's public Instagram posts. The man documented his life like he was running for office. Gym selfies, protein smoothie close-ups, inspirational quotes over sunset photos. But there were holes in his timeline that matched Claire's schedule with mathematical precision. I made coffee and settled in for some quality surveillance work. If this was going to be war, I needed intelligence. Monday morning brought Claire home, sheepish but defiant. She moved through the house like she was walking through a minefield, testing my mood with careful glances and neutral small talk. "How was your weekend?" she asked, making her usual smoothie. "Productive. Yours?" "Fine. Good. Meera and I talked through some things." "Such as?" She turned to face me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, calculation. "Such as what we both need to be happy. And what do you need, Claire?" "Space. Time to figure things out without you analyzing every word I say." "I'm not analyzing. I'm just asking questions." "See? That's exactly what I mean. Everything's an interrogation with you lately. Lately, as if my sudden interest in her activities was unreasonable, as if I was the problem. "I'm going to spin class," she said, grabbing her bag. "Don't wait up. Spin class. At 10 in the morning, on a Monday." I pulled up Elite Fitness's schedule online and confirmed what I already knew. No spin classes on Monday mornings, but Elias did offer private consultations by appointment. I waited 30 minutes, then drove to the gym. Elite Fitness occupied a converted warehouse in Silver Lake, all exposed brick and industrial lighting, the kind of place that charged premium prices for the privilege of sweating in aesthetically pleasing surroundings. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the main workout floor, empty except for a few dedicated morning warriors and one couple having what looked like a very intimate training session in the corner. Claire and Elias. I parked across the street and watched through my phone's camera, zoomed in just enough to confirm what I already knew. They weren't exercising. They were barely pretending to exercise. Elias had his hands on her waist, adjusting her form on a piece of equipment that didn't require that kind of adjustment. Claire was laughing, head thrown back, touching his arm in a way that made my chest tight. I took photos, not because I needed more evidence. I had plenty. Because I wanted them to understand, eventually, how thoroughly I'd documented their betrayal. They disappeared into what looked like a private office. I waited. 20 minutes later, they emerged looking satisfied in a way that had nothing to do with cardiovascular fitness. Elias walked Claire to her car, kissed her goodbye, not on the cheek, and watched her drive away before heading back inside. Knowing finding fight impelling, I watched and avoid detection. She beat me by 10 minutes, just enough time to shower and change clothes. When I walked through the front door, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, looking for all the world like she'd been there all morning. "How was spin class?" I asked. "Great. Really got my heart rate up." "I bet. What did you work on?" "Oh, core strength, flexibility, the usual." The usual, right. That evening, I waited until Claire was asleep and went back to her laptop. The email thread with Elias had grown longer, more detailed. They were planning something bigger than just an affair. Something that involved lawyers and documentation and careful timing. Got some great footage today, Elias had written. The way he grabbed your arm when you tried to leave looked perfect on camera. Very aggressive. Footage. I scrolled up, finding references to hidden cameras, staged arguments, a systematic campaign to build a case against me that existed only in their imagination. They were creating evidence of abuse that had never happened, constructing a narrative that would justify taking everything I'd worked for. But they'd made a mistake, a big one. All of their planning, all of their careful documentation, was happening on devices and accounts I had access to. Claire had been so focused on building her case against me that she'd forgotten to hide the construction materials. I spent the next 3 days gathering evidence of their evidence. Screenshots of every email, every text, every photo. I documented their schedules, their meetings, their lies. I created a timeline that showed not just their affair, but their conspiracy to destroy me. And then I started fighting back. It began small. Elias's BMW, a ridiculous white convertible that he parked in the same spot every day, developed some problems. Nothing dangerous, nothing permanent, just annoying. Very annoying. I waited until after midnight on Wednesday, then paid his car a visit. A few pounds of raw shrimp, carefully distributed through the air vents, some industrial-strength adhesive applied to strategic locations under the hood, holding signs that would only be visible when he opened it for service. Cheaters suck, in bright red letters. Your girlfriend's husband says hi, in smaller print below. Thursday morning, I got a call from my friend Vince. Ex-cop, current bouncer, perpetually amused by other people's drama. Heard you might be having some marital difficulties, he said. News travels fast. Claire called my ex-wife, asked if she knew any good divorce lawyers. Specifically mentioned needing someone who handles difficult situations. Difficult situations. Code for abusive husbands, apparently. She say anything else? Just that you'd been getting violent lately, angry, unpredictable. Vince paused. Which is funny, because I've known you for 15 years, and you've never thrown a punch at anything but a heavy bag. She's building a case. Yeah, I figured. You need help? Maybe, probably. Well, you know where to find me. And Gavin, be careful. False accusations are easy to make and hard to disprove. That afternoon, Claire came home agitated. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged despite obvious attempts at repair, and she moved around the house with jerky, nervous energy. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Everything's fine. You sure? You seem upset. I said I'm fine, Gavin. God, why do you always have to push? There it was, the setup, the provocation designed to make me react, to give her something to document and distort. I could almost see her phone recording from her purse, waiting to capture my response. Instead, I smiled. Okay, just checking. I love you, you know. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered, confusion replacing calculation on her face. What? I love you. Despite everything that's happening, despite the distance between us, I still love you. I want us to work this out. She stared at me like I'd started speaking Mandarin. This wasn't in the script. I was supposed to get angry, to give her ammunition for her lawyers and her narrative of victimization. I need to. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. I'm going out. Where? Meera's. I'm staying at Meera's tonight. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone in a house that felt more like a crime scene every day. I poured myself a beer and sat in my workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects and the tools of my trade. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stay away from my car, asshole. Elias. Apparently he'd discovered my artwork. I typed back. Don't know what you're talking about, but maybe you should be more careful where you park. Lot of crazy people in this city. I know it was you. Prove it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. This isn't over. No, I replied. It's not. Friday morning brought a knock at my door. 2 police officers, looking bored and slightly apologetic. Mr. Rourke, we need to talk to you about a complaint that's been filed. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of complaint? Harassment. Stalking. Your wife says you've been following her, threatening her boyfriend, vandalizing property, her boyfriend, not even pretending anymore. I haven't threatened anyone, I said, and I don't know anything about vandalism. Sir, We're going to need you to come down to the station, just to answer some questions. Am I under arrest? No, sir, just questions. But I knew how this worked. Questions became accusations, became charges, became convictions. Claire and Elias had moved faster than I'd expected, escalating before I was ready. I'll need to call my lawyer, I said. That's your right, sir. I rode to the station in the back of a patrol car, watching my neighborhood slide past through bulletproof glass. Normal people living normal lives, probably not being framed by their cheating spouses and overpriced personal trainers. At the station, I met Detective Sarah Chen, a woman who looked like she'd heard every lie and excuse in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Your wife says you've been following her, she began. Taking pictures, making threats. I haven't threatened anyone. She has documentation. Photos of you outside her gym. Text messages that could be interpreted as threatening. Text messages. I thought about my exchange with Elias, the careful ambiguity of my words. I'd like to see these alleged threats. Detective Chen slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of text messages I'd never sent, from a number that wasn't mine, to Claire's phone. Threats that escalated from vague to specific, culminating in promises of violence that made my blood run cold. I didn't send these, I said. The number traces back to a prepaid phone purchased with cash. No cameras at the store, no way to verify who bought it. Then you can't prove I sent them. No, but we can't prove you didn't, either. And combined with the other evidence, she opened another folder. Photos of me outside Elite Fitness, taken with a telephoto lens that made my surveillance look like stalking. Screenshots of my internet searches, Elias's address, his schedule, his social media profiles. A timeline that painted me as an obsessed, dangerous husband spiraling toward violence. They'd been watching me watch them, building a case while I thought I was building one against them. Every move I'd made had been anticipated, documented, turned into evidence of my instability. Your wife is scared, Mr. Rourke. She's filed for a restraining order. Temporary, pending a hearing next week. A restraining order. Which meant I couldn't go home, couldn't contact Claire, couldn't defend myself without violating a court order and proving their point about my dangerous instability. This is a setup, I said. Maybe, but from where I sit, it looks like a woman trying to protect herself from an increasingly erratic husband. They kept me for 6 hours, asking the same questions in different ways, trying to get me to admit to something, anything, that would justify their narrative. Finally, they released me with a warning and a court date. I stood on the steps of the police station, holding a restraining order that banned me from my own home, and felt something that might have been admiration for the thoroughness of their betrayal. Claire and Elias hadn't just planned to leave me. They'd planned to destroy me so completely that I'd never recover. Financially, socially, legally, they wanted to salt the earth behind them. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed I'd keep playing defense. I pulled out my phone and called Vince. I need that help now, I said. What kind of help? The kind that fights back. Vince met me at a diner in Burbank, the kind of place that served coffee strong enough to strip paint and ask no questions about why you looked like you'd been hit by a truck. He slid into the booth across from me, all 250 pounds of ex-cop skepticism and barely contained violence. So, he said, stirring sugar into coffee that probably didn't need any more stimulation. Your wife's trying to destroy you. That's the situation, yeah. And you want to fight back. I want to survive. There's a difference. He leaned back, studying me with the kind of attention that had probably made suspects confess to crimes they didn't commit. Tell me everything, from the beginning, and don't leave out the parts that make you look bad. So I did. The whole sordid story, from truth or dare to restraining orders, from hidden cameras to fake text messages. Vince listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on a napkin that looked like it had seen better decades. They're good, he said when I finished. Professional-level manipulation. This isn't some spur-of-the-moment affair. This is a long-term con. Can you prove it? Maybe. Depends how sloppy they got. But first, we need to get you back in your house. The restraining order is temporary and based on fabricated evidence. We just need to fabricate some evidence of our own. I stared at him. I'm not going to lie to the police. Who said anything about lying? I'm talking about context, perspective. The same facts can tell different stories depending on how you arrange them. He was right, of course. Claire and Elias had taken perfectly innocent actions, my internet searches, my presence at public locations, my reasonable responses to their provocations, and arrange them into a narrative of stalking and harassment. What do you have in mind? Well, for starters, your wife's been living a double life for months. That's not just adultery, that's fraud. She's been using joint assets to fund her affair, lying about her whereabouts, potentially exposing you to legal liability if she's been doing anything else questionable. Such as? Such as filing false police reports, such as perjury in her restraining order application, such as conspiracy to commit fraud if they're planning to take you for everything in the divorce. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo, Claire and Elias, kissing in the parking lot of Elite Fitness. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 hours after she'd told the police she was afraid for her safety. Terrified women don't usually make out with their boyfriends in public, Vince said, especially not when they've just filed restraining orders against their allegedly dangerous husbands. You've been watching them since yesterday. Amazing what you can see when you know where to look. He swiped to the next photo. Claire and Elias entering a hotel together, both laughing. This was taken 30 minutes after she told Detective Chen that she was staying with friends because she was too scared to be alone. More photos. Claire shopping for lingerie while supposedly hiding from my alleged threats. Elias posting gym selfies with captions about living your truth and cutting toxic people out of your life. They're not acting like people in fear, I said. No, they're acting like people who think they've won, which makes them careless. Vince had been busy. In less than 24 hours, he'd documented a pattern of behavior that contradicted everything Claire had told the police. But more than that, he'd uncovered something I'd missed. Your boy Elias has a history, he said, sliding a printout across the table. 2 previous relationships that ended with restraining orders filed against the women's husbands. Same pattern, affair, fake evidence of abuse, messy divorce where the wife gets everything. I stared at the documents. Police reports, court filings, newspaper articles about fitness instructor helps women escape abusive marriages. Elias wasn't just Claire's lover, he was a professional homewrecker with a system. He's done this before, twice that I can find, probably more. Guy's got a type. Married women with assets and trusting husbands. What happened to the other husbands? One moved out of state, broke and broken. The other, Vince paused. Suicide, 6 months after the divorce was finalized. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. This wasn't just about Claire leaving me. This was about destroying me so completely that I'd never recover. And if Elias's pattern held, it wouldn't end with the divorce. We need to move fast, Vince said, before they escalate. What do you mean, escalate? I mean, if the restraining order doesn't stick, if you start fighting back effectively, they'll need something bigger, something that puts you away for real. Something bigger, like evidence of actual violence, like staged attacks with real injuries and hospital records and witnesses. They're planning something, I said. Count on it. Which is why we're going to hit them first. Vince's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of defending against their attacks, we'd expose the pattern, show the police, the courts, and anyone else who'd listen that Claire wasn't a victim. She was a willing participant in a con game that had destroyed other families. First, we document everything. Every lie, every contradiction, every piece of evidence that shows they're manipulating the system. Then we make it public. Social media, local news, their friends and families. We tell the real story before they can control the narrative. That sounds like harassment. No, that sounds like self-defense. There's a difference. He was right. They'd declared war on me, using the legal system and social pressure as weapons. Fighting back wasn't harassment. It was survival. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Vince would continue surveillance, documenting their activities, and building a timeline that contradicted their claims. I would work on gathering evidence of Elias's previous cons, reaching out to the other husbands if possible. What about the restraining order hearing? I asked. We'll be ready. By the time you walk into that courtroom, we'll have enough evidence to make Claire and her lawyer look like fools. I left the diner feeling something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not just hope, anticipation. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just reacting to their moves. I was making my own. That afternoon, I checked into a motel near the airport and set up a temporary command center. Laptop, printer, phone chargers, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. If I was going to war, I needed a base of operations. I started with social media. Claire and Elias had been careful to keep their relationship off their main accounts, But people in love can't help themselves. They leave traces, digital breadcrumbs that tell the real story, tagged locations that matched, comments on mutual friends' posts, photos taken at the same time in the same places, like patterns that revealed shared interests and coordinated activities. I created a timeline, cross-referencing their digital footprints with the dates Claire had claimed to be afraid, hiding, seeking help from friends. The contradictions were glaring once you knew what to look for. Then I found the smoking gun, buried in Elias's Instagram stories. Archived but still accessible, was a video from 3 weeks ago. Him and Claire at a restaurant, toasting with champagne. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings with my queen." The timestamp showed it was taken 2 hours after Claire had filed her first police report about my alleged harassment. I screenshotted everything, created a comprehensive digital dossier that told the real story of their relationship. Not a woman in fear seeking comfort, but two people celebrating their successful manipulation of the system. My phone rang. "Vince, you need to see this," he said. "Can you meet me at the storage facility on Ventura?" 20 minutes later, I found Vince standing next to a rented storage unit, looking grim. "Elias rented this 3 months ago," he said. "Paid cash, used a fake name, but the security cameras don't lie." He opened the unit. Inside were boxes of documents, recording equipment, and a laptop connected to external hard drives. "He's been planning this for a while," Vince said, booting up the laptop. "Look at this." The screen filled with folders organized by date and target. Claire wasn't Elias's first mark. She was his third. Each folder contained the same type of evidence: surveillance photos, recorded conversations, fabricated text messages, and detailed timelines for destroying marriages. "This is his business model," I said. "Gets better. Look at the financial records." Elias had been systematic about monetizing his cons, not just taking assets through divorce settlements, but blackmailing the husbands afterward, threatening to release embarrassing photos or fabricate new evidence unless they paid ongoing hush money. "The guy who killed himself," Vince said. He'd been paying Elias $5,000 a month for 2 years, right up until